Hello, House Call community. Welcome back. We are here in the House Call community with yet another extraordinary guest. I have in the community today someone that's known as Cupcakes and Cardiology. And I know you're probably saying, Cupcakes, Cardiology? And I just want you to know it's probably not the usual correlation that you'll probably put in your head together, but this is a very interesting story. And I want to welcome to the House Call community, Simran Frontain. Welcome to the House Call community.
Hi. Hi.
Hi,
everybody.
I am so glad that you were able to sit down with us today and share your story. I like to tell our community how a guest made it to our community. And I was looking back and I saw that there was a post that I had on Instagram where I was talking about women and heart disease and heart health, and you liked it. And the IG account name is what struck me. And I was like, Cupcakes and Cardiology. I was like, okay. So I went on over to your page and I started looking around and started seeing, this is interesting. And I read your bio and I said, oh, wow. And that's when I sent you a direct message and said, hey, can we talk about what this Cupcakes and Cardiology and what's in your bio and have you come and share your story? And you said yes. So that's how you came to the House Call community. So, Simran, can you tell us what is Cupcakes and Cardiology in relation to your medical story? Can you start telling us about your medical story?
Well, Cupcakes and Cardiology is kind of my medical story. I thought that I, like everybody my age, I'm on social media, and I stumbled across the Instagram recovery community, and I noticed that there were some crucial errors with it, that it was a very sugar-coated version of the story, and I wanted to share my own personal experiences with eating disorder recovery, and raise awareness also about the cardiovascular effects of eating disorders. I just think that the community needed a different perspective, so that's what I decided to do.
Wow. And as you've said so far, that yours is a recovery story and it deals with an eating disorder. So can you tell us what eating disorder were you diagnosed with? And let's start talking about your story, and if you could take us down and open up the journey for us.
I've had an eating disorder since about the age of 8. My parents had their respective food issues. My mom struggled with binge eating, and my dad was orthorexic, and their issues rubbed off on me, and I developed anorexia from a young age. That all caught up with me the summer before last.
Wow. And
the summer before this.
Before this.
Yes, summer of 2015, or summer of 2016, because, hold on, what year is it? Yeah, summer of 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, you host a blog post, and we'll put out all of the information where people can follow you. And I was reading the About Me page, on the About Me page, and you were telling a little bit about your story. There was something that you stated that really jumped out and caught my attention. When you talk about your parents and their respective relationships with food and their own food issues, you talked about, as a young child, you would hear your aunts talk about their own struggles, such as their failed diet, challenges. And then can you tell us about when you were transferred from one school to the next? It seems like that's when things started to blossom for you. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I have always been ahead academically, so I received a scholarship to a private school, and it was a very different environment from the one I grew up in. Everybody was from a very wealthy background with very different expectations than I had. And they had all also known each other since like millionaire pre-K. And I just felt so isolated, and I wanted to fit in like every kid does, but at the same time I wanted to stand out. And I think that is really when my eating disorder got bad. It was a coping skill, and it was my endeavor to belong.
And tell us how did it start manifesting itself? So you talk about wanting to fit in, and it was a way of coping. There was a one story that you told that you started unfolding about a group of you and what you all would do to go to one of the local, I guess at that time it seemed like a Starbucks type of version. So tell us how did this kind of start for you?
Well, I tried out for and made my school's soccer team, and I was just like, wow, friends.
Right,
yay.
right.
And all of those girls were very rich, very athletic. I was not. I was sort of a weakling on the team, and they took me under their wing, which was very nice of them. Oh, and they were also all a year older.
Oh, okay.
So I went with them to the coffee shop. It was a coffee bean and tea leaf, which is a lot like Starbucks. And we were all obviously too young for coffee, so we got those coffee beverages, which are analogous to frappuccinos, and we would just drink those, and we would chat about school, and then our parents would pick us up. And my mom always told me how bad those beverages were for me, how much sugar they had, how much weight I would gain. And first of all, those things were not true, because I was eating a balanced diet. At the beginning, I was eating a balanced diet, and I was exercising.
Okay.
So, and I wasn't going to gain a ridiculous amount of weight and just like balloon out and suddenly emote from having one coffee beverage a day. That's ridiculous. It's also just, nobody should say those things to a kid. Nobody should put disordered messages like that in a child's head and force them to vilify food. And that very, very quickly escalated into a full-blown eating disorder. I just assumed my mom was right. I mean, I didn't know any better. What 11-year-old has the critical thinking skills to say, oh, yeah, this is diet culture, and diet culture is wrong. I mean, I just assumed my mom was right.
Right.
You just assume your parents are right, don't you?
Exactly. Now, what did you start doing when your mom said these drinks are gonna, make you gain weight?
I started taking compensatory measures. So I would skip lunch. I would throw away my lunch. That very quickly escalated to skipping dinner and skipping breakfast. And before I knew it, I cut out those coffee drinks. And I don't necessarily know how I got to that point, but by the end of 8th grade, I was eating 100 calories a day, maximum.
Whoa. And just 100 calories a day?
Yeah.
How would you feel?
I felt horrible. It was sort of like, when you get off a plane and you can't really sleep, so you're just kind of in a haze? It was sort of like that feeling all the time. I could barely keep my eyes open. I could barely walk. And at that point, I was starting to have some of the severe complications of malnutrition. So my organs were shutting down. So I was in liver failure, for instance. And thankfully, they managed to get me out of that with minimal damage. But it was an incredibly scary medical circumstance. Yeah. And I know that now, looking back on it. Wow. I mean, at the time, at the time I was very ill and I wasn't ready to recover. And I was just like, no, get me out of here. I need to go lose weight.
Whoa. Now, at the time when you had the liver failure and you started having medical complications, is that when you were diagnosed with an eating disorder at that point?
That's when I received my official diagnosis of anorexia, yes.
Okay, okay. Now, were there any, because at this point you're still considered a child, were there any adults that noticed how that you just didn't seem yourself? You know, maybe were there any school teachers, were there any counselors at school, were there any relatives? I mean, was there anybody looking on that said something's not right with Simran?
It's a very hard thing to talk about. And at the beginning, nobody really notices. It's like when you start to lose weight, you get a lot of compliments. It's like, oh, you look great, or wow, how did you do it? Or there's something different about you. And it's all very positive for a while. And that really feeds the eating disorder until you get emaciated. And that's only then do people start to worry. But by then, sometimes it's too late.
Oh, wow.
And yes, people said stuff, but my mom was blind to it. She didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to acknowledge that I had a problem. I mean, what parent would hear the child is suffering?
Wow. So now you're in the hospital, you have liver failure, but you decided you didn't want to accept your official diagnosis. You get out of the hospital, and do you for a while try to kind of comply with everybody so that nobody bothers you? Or what happened after you got out of the hospital and, you know, now you're not in that acute emergency situation?
Well, after fighting treatment with everything I got out and I maintained the minimum weight possible. My goal was to convince everybody I was fine so that they would just go away and leave me to drop more weight. But I was just hoping people wouldn't notice.
Wow.
I was hoping that I could just go on with my illness, and I did everything I could to do that.
So after this point, what is the next time? You said now there was a point in the summer of 2016 where things just kind of really fell apart for you. Can you tell us what happened? What was the impetus behind this?
In the summer of 2016, I was at this big Shakespeare conference that I had been honored to be invited to, and I was so excited to be there. And I got up one morning and I was feeling very strange, but I thought nothing of it. And I started walking to class and I just started feeling worse and worse and worse. So I eventually stopped to sit down, and before I really knew what was happening, I was at a hospital and people had just told me that I'd had a heart attack. And I didn't really believe it because I thought that only old fat men had heart attacks.
Whoa, yes, absolutely. I mean, if people are watching the YouTube channel of this conversation, they can see you're a very young person. And could you tell, I mean, at this point, how old are you when this happened?
I was 18.
18 years old, and you have just been told you had a heart attack.
I didn't believe them.
Wow.
And I didn't understand what they were saying. I don't think I even knew what a heart attack was. It's, it's one of those words or one of those phrases that you hear thrown around.
Yes.
But nobody, unless they're a cardiologist, knows what it is. I was just like, what? Okay, can I leave now?
Wow.
And that was, once they told me how serious it was a wake-up call. It really was. But it was incredibly shocking.
Yeah. Wow.
To me and to them. They were very confused. They had to look at my EKG several times. They were like, hold on, what?
Now, had you lost a lot of weight by this point? So were they able to start putting the pieces together and start saying, okay, this is a complication of your eating disorder, and then start educating you about that? How did that come about?
Well, the people at that hospital were kind of clueless. It was not a very good hospital. They had very little understanding of eating disorders.
Okay.
So they were able, when I got back, I was in the UK at the time, so when I got back to the States, I was very fortunate to see an incredible cardiologist here.
Okay.
And she explained everything to me, and she explained that this was caused by an electrolyte imbalance, which was a result of malnutrition.
Gotcha.
And it makes sense. It still just doesn't feel real.
It does make sense. And and when we're having a conversation, I like to, when I can, inject the science into this so that I can help try and pull this together. Of course, guys that have listened to the show before, I will get a cardiologist in here before long so that we can talk about this. But what can happen from my, mere understanding, and of course I give my disclaimer, I'm not a cardiologist, is that, we need electrolytes like calcium, we need hydrogen, we need potassium, we need all these different electrolytes to actually help the muscle tissue to contract and be healthy and the nerve endings to be healthy. You need calcium, you need chloride, you need these things to actually go through the cellular channels that help a nerve ending to conduct a nerve impulse that then helps to conduct the heartbeat. You need the heart muscle to be healthy, to be able to beat when it's given the signal to beat. And when you don't have these things working together like a nice orchestra, then you've got the band section, you've got one section doing something on its own, you got the violins playing on their own, you have everything just going kind of haywire. And with the heart muscle, when you have an electrolyte imbalance, it can be weak. It cannot contract like it should. You also have the vasculature that's getting messed up, so you don't have blood flow to the heart, which is an ischemic attack, which can cause a heart attack. So it does make sense that when you are so malnourished that you have these really big swings in electrolyte abnormalities, that you can have a heart attack. And that is the thing that drew me to your story, is that when I was able to go on your site and start reading, and it just made sense. I was like, oh my goodness, this is one of those things that we in the community and medical community, I feel, don't talk about a lot. And we don't give people pause. We do a lot of yo-yo dieting. We do a lot of restrictive dieting. And we don't just make healthy choices every day. And I love the part in your story, and it was one of those sad parts, though, where you did talk about how you listened to the culture around you. And a lot of it is our family culture even. Just listening to Aunt so-and-so or cousin so-and-so, and how they're talking about, oh, I'm trying to get into this dress, or I need to drop 20 pounds, or I need to do this. And it has given me pause as a mother of what signals am I sending to our children, our son and our daughter, when I say, oh, I need to, lose weight. So I've become very conscious of saying, I just need to make healthy choices today. This doesn't help my brain work very well. I know what fuels my brain or what fuels my body. And so when I read your blog, that just kind of gave me confirmation that, yes, we need to change our speech around how we eat and how we treat our bodies. So I'm just so glad that you're being so transparent with your story. I really appreciate this. So now you've had your heart attack. Really, truly, you have had a heart attack. You're back in the States, and this cardiologist is now explaining to you what happened. What is your treatment now? What goes on in making sure that you stay healthy?
Well, you mean, what am I doing now, or what is eating disorder treatment like?
That's a good question. I'm glad you made me break it down. Let's do it in two parts. Let's say, how did you treat your eating disorder then? Like, how did you get on the recovery for that? And then we'll go into what are you doing now?
Okay. Well, I was sort of scared into recovering.
Mm-hmm.
The whole heart attack thing was very shocking, and I was just like, oh, okay, I guess I don't really have a choice now.
Right.
Recovery wasn't an option. It was sort of forced on me by my circumstances. So I was incredibly ill at that point. I weighed 75 pounds.
Whoa.
And I'm quite tall. I'm 5 feet 5 inches. So it was, I had a very dangerously low BMI. So the first thing that they had to do was physically put weight on me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very hard to do for anybody, but especially somebody with a cardiac history due to complications such as refeeding syndrome. Because you don't want to like send the body into shock with the administration of calories.
Right.
So they had to start slowly. So they started me off on a meal plan. I saw a nutritionist, and he put me on a meal plan of about 2,000 calories.
Okay.
And
you said 2,000 or 3,000?
2,000.
2,000. Okay.
Very quickly increased.
Wow.
But they started me off eating about 2,000 calories, and they increased as I slowly gained weight.
Got it.
And of course, I had to see, I had to deal with the mental component of my eating disorder as well. So I saw a therapist and a psychiatrist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now let's bring it to what's going on now. It seems like you had said in the beginning of our conversation that you went and you found the recovery side of IG, of Instagram, and you saw that people were kind of sugarcoating recovery, and you're saying, wait a minute, it's not always just, oh, I'm better now, life is great. And so what are you doing now at this point?
Well, recovery is not great. Recovery is a constant struggle, and it is miserable. But that being said, having an eating disorder and dying of that eating disorder is much, much worse. So I was forced to drop out of school due to my heart attack. So I kind of needed something to do. So I decided to start a blog. And I basically, I thought about what I needed when I was recovering. And that was really, it was the truth, somebody's candid experiences, but also hard science. So I decided to do a lot of research into the cardiovascular complications of eating disorders and just kind of cardiology in general, and put it into accessible but intelligent terms. So I built a website with all of that.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I'm doing now.
And it is an awesome website. I love it. It's easy to navigate. I love the section that you had that talked about cardiology, and you talked about certain tests, or you talked about terms that are used. So when somebody goes, they can kind of understand the lingo that's going on at their visit, because a lot of times that is half the battle. When a patient comes in, we as a practitioner don't realize sometimes that our lingo is a totally different language.
And it's very scary for patients when they just jab a bunch of needles in you and throw a bunch of words at you. Luckily, my cardiologist was amazing at explaining everything. She taught me how to read an EKG. She taught me how to read an echo. She told me all the blood tests. She explained what they meant. And that really helped me feel comfortable with the process. And it really helped me trust her.
Yes.
Because otherwise, and it made me a lot less scared.
Yes, yes. I love hearing that.
I knew what was going on. And it was it was a lot more approachable that way.
Yes, yes. That is awesome. Oh, wow. So, before we leave, Simran, I want to have you give our community a tip of the day. We usually ask you to, you can either give it on the subject that we're talking about or anything that is on your heart. And then before you leave the community, if you could tell us where everybody can find you on the internet.
Sorry, so my phone connection's a little spotty. Can you repeat the first question?
No problem. I said we usually ask our guests to give our community a tip of the day before we let you leave. I'm looking at our time and I would just want to wrap up this conversation. And so if you would give our community a tip of the day, it can be on the subject we're talking about or anything that's on your heart. We would be honored.
Trust yourself. Trust your body to know physically what it needs. And honor your food cravings, honor your exercise cravings. If you feel like resting, rest. If you feel like going for a run, go for a run. If you want to eat cake, eat cake. Because in the long run, skipping that cake, demonizing that cake will do you more harm than just having a couple bites. Your body knows what it needs, and you need to learn to trust it. And I think the same thing goes for your mind and for your life choices. That, you know what's right, and that's up to you, not up to other people around you.
That is
it's your life.
I love that tip. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Before we let you go, where can people find you on the internet?
I have a website. It's www.cupcakesandcardiology.com. And I'm also on Instagram. My username is Cupcakes and Cardiology. You can find me there.
Cool, cool. And on your website, you also have really great recipes. I wanted to bring that out. So guys, head on over.
Oh, yeah.
Head on over to Cupcakes and Cardiology and just enjoy yourselves and get some more information and get educated. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us in the House Call community. We really enjoyed your story and it has taught us so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Awesome. All right, community, till next time, we'll see you back here. Bye now.